You are listening to the Pencil and Paper Podcast Network.
I'm Katrina, and I love anime.
I'm Steven, and I'm aware of anime.
But what if that affection could rub off?
Perhaps that excitement in her eyes got me curious.
I could offer up some solid anime.
I could give them a watch, just to see what all the fuss is about.
And maybe, just maybe,
I could learn to love anime too.
Welcome to Inspired by a Weeaboo. Hello everyone, and welcome back to Inspired by a Weeaboo. I am your host Katrina, and with me is my husband Steven.
Hello.
We just finished episode 16 of Fullmetal Alchemist. Steven, what did you think?
Well, we are kind of coming off the aftermath of the Scar battle, or the big stuff that happened there, and I wouldn't call this a nothing episode, but I feel like with everything that just went down, it was a little hard act to follow because we had a lot of revelations in the last episode. So this one was trying to just pick up the pieces after the fact and see where everybody's kind of standing, because Ed and Al are, I guess, out of commission at the moment. They really can't do much because, lost an arm, and Al's got half of his side blown off. So they got to get fixed. Obviously, they're wanting to go back to the auto mailer, whose name I can't remember.
It'd be Winry and her grandmother.
Right, okay. So they need to do that. Now, was it me? And maybe you can explain what was going on here, but as Mustang and his crew are sitting with Ed and Al, I feel like they're giving them a lot of shit in that moment.
Ed and Al?
Yeah, like they're just constantly just roasting them and beating up on them.
It's more like Ed, and it's because of his attitude. You have to remember, they've been around him, even though we haven't seen it, they've been around him for years. So they know that, he's hot-tempered. They know he's arrogant. They know, he thinks he's hot shit. And because he didn't listen and didn't do what he was supposed to do, him and his brother wound up in this state and could have even risked even more lives, because if Colonel Mustang had went in alone, during the rain, he would have died too.
Yeah, true.
So I think it's just they're picking on them, but I feel like you also have to kind of realize that this is kind of their love language. Like if they were just dismissive and didn't say anything to him, I feel like that would be more of they're upset or angry at Ed and Al versus them picking on them. Okay. Because if you look, even the way Colonel Mustang goes about, picking on Ed, because obviously when Ed brings up the whole, the first time they ever met him, and specifically met him at their house, Winfrey's house. Well, remember, he's the one that killed her parents. He knows who they are. He knows who Winfrey is and who the grandmother is. And that I think that was Ed kind of being like, don't be a dick. I know what you did. And then Mustang just kind of plays it off, and then he gets serious and he's just like, you caused this. This is, you got to fix it. You got to fucking help yourself instead of just going in guns a-blazing.
Yeah, true. So, like I said, they need to get back to their hometown so they can get the auto mailer to fix them up. And obviously nobody wants to go because there's still the threat of Scar, and they need protection, and everybody has an excuse except for Armstrong, who gladly accepts. He seems like he's gotten a little bit more, obviously we haven't seen him all that much up to this point, but he seems like he got a little bit more fancy-pantsed about his presentation.
You missed it in the episode when he fights Scar. I think you had walked out of the room right at that point where he does like the sparkles and everything, but that's like his trope. And like I just love him so freaking much. He is strong, he is confident, he obviously is a family man. Yes, everything he does, or just about everything he does, you're going to hear, this was an Armstrong
family tradition.
Family tradition passed down from generations.
Mm-hmm.
That's his whole thing. But he has the biggest freaking heart, I would say, outside of Hughes. Armstrong has a very good heart. He's a very good person. He is a loving person. And he wants to be that kind of role model for Ed and Al and to be their protector. And that's one of the things you'll definitely realize is he does take a lot of kind of shit and he's still there. Like, he understands that they're children. Like, him and Hughes are two of the best freaking characters outside of Ed and Al, because it's like they love wholeheartedly. And even when you do things that you could be punished for or anything like that, they're going to be the ones that are going to let it slide. They're going to be the ones that understand where those boys are coming from.
Okay. So they get to the train station and they're saying I wouldn't really call them goodbyes, just kind of laying stuff out. And Hughes actually escorts them to the train station, or at least sends them off, if you will. And now, so there was something about the comment that Hughes made, because Hughes had made, or was kind of talking to Ed about, I guess, everything. And he said, "Do you have a message for Mustang?" And of course, he gives him a mouthful of, like, you can tell him he can, yada, 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 yada. But then there was, what was it that he said? Because Hughes said something to Ed, and he got a smirk on his face, but I was surprised by that.
Hughes was telling Ed that Nina, the person who killed Nina, was Scar.
That's right.
And the smirk is kind of like, Ed didn't have a reason to fight Scar. Even though he was killing people, he didn't kill people Ed knew.
Right.
And he understood where Scar was coming from. He understood why Scar was doing the things he did. But to know that he'd killed Nina kind of gives him more of a reason to actually fight Scar wholeheartedly.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. So that makes sense. I was curious if that was kind of a smirk of vengeance. Like, I'm going to stomp him down now that I know he's hurt someone or did something to someone I cared about. Yeah. So that adds up. All right. We get an odd scene right about that time first of all, we see that Scar is tracking them because he had some little spy, and see, he lost me a little bit there, because he took this little girl hostage just to get this boy to get some information. Yes. And that seemed a little low down to use children. Like
Scar also said before he, punched the bags and disappeared, "Forgive me." So it was kind of like a means to the end. And I don't think he ever had any intention of hurting either of the children. If the boy couldn't come through, then it probably just would have been like a scare tactic and gone on his way. But he's not going to go out of his way to hurt innocent children.
You would hope, yeah. So, after that, we get to see where Marcoh wound up, because as we saw him last, he was being taken off by the Brigadier General, which we did see him, not the Brigadier General, the King Bradley.
Yes, King Bradley.
And he and Mustang had a moment where they were kind of chit-chatting about everything, and he knows something. He knows a lot more than he's letting on. Because, especially about the Philosopher's Stone, I imagine.
I mean, you also have to keep in thought, King Bradley is the top of the military. He is the top of the country, so he knows everything.
So he seemed like he was trying to maybe maybe not shut it down, just kind of be like, don't worry about it. It's all good. It's taken care of. Just you move on to other things. Don't worry about that thing. It's not real. it's silly
Yeah.
and move along and don't worry about it.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously there's more to it than that because he says as much.
Yeah.
But then we get Marcoh, and he is
Yes.
confronted by
Lust.
This was Lust. For some reason, I was thinking I had that wrong, but it was Lust.
No, Lust.
So Lust confronts him. He knows exactly who she is, or at least he knows she's not. I don't want to say of this world, but
I would say not human.
Not human. He knows that she's something more than what she's letting on.
Yes.
They have an exchange. He tries to offer, which good on him and trying something like that, but that didn't pan out.
No.
And, I'm even surprised she allowed him to take that shot. But maybe that was a tactic on her part just to be like, yeah, you're stupid. Because it seemed like a very sneaky move, but she always felt like she was a character, or at least thus far, that's always been a step ahead, like she's observant.
Oh, yeah.
And she would have seen that coming. So... what was their conversation about again?
That he told Ed and Al where to find his findings of the Philosopher's Stone, and she wants to know because although she has the imitation stone, she does not have the real one. Right,
and he sent them to a library, or at least that's what the little piece of paper he. Apparently, did he drop that in the last episode, or was it just in this episode that we saw that?
You kind of saw it in a flashback.
Okay.
You never really
actually
saw it in the actual,
Gotcha.
Because it's kind of after everything else, after Scar disappears and right before Marcoh walks away, you see him drop the paper. So, yeah, it's basically telling Ed and Al, this is where you'll find my research.
Gotcha. Okay. So I was trying to make sure because I did not remember that scene. And I was like, did I miss that? So back to the kids. They're on a train. Ed is trying to endure Armstrong. He seems like he's a little about it. And then Al is cargo. Riding with sheep.
Put with the sheep.
Yeah. And because of that, he got left behind at a previous station.
Yep.
Did they explain why he got set off? Or
just that it must have been mistaken. They thought it was, an order to be dropped there.
Gotcha.
And didn't realize it wasn't.
So once Ed realized that he was not there because he was just trying to take a breather from Armstrong, go see his brother, and then they have to go make their way back to the previous station to see if they can find Al. But by the time they get there, he's been found and stolen by a kid. Now, just give me a simple yes or no. Are we going to see that kid again? Because
not that I remember.
Okay.
I think they're this is one of those that's, I don't remember if it's a filler episode. I'd have to look it up, but it definitely plays like a filler episode, but it also does tie in different things because like the grandfather fought in the Resembool War. So the Resembool War. So Ed because he does lash out at Armstrong and basically throws that in his face of, I know what you did.
Yeah.
And, it takes Armstrong, aback and everything because obviously that's a very sore subject for a lot of the military members.
Mm-hmm.
And after Ed listens to this man and what he has to say to him, he kind of starts to remember. You're going to see Edward grow. Basically, at the beginning, he's still a child. Even as we follow him, he's still a kid and he stays a child, technically.
But there's emotional growth.
Exactly. He's growing emotionally. He's starting to understand that the things he perceives in that, kind of childlike rose-colored glasses type things isn't all of it. It's not just black and white. There's so many grays. So while you have these people that performed atrocities, they're not bad people. Mm-hmm. They were being, they were being ordered. Somebody else was pulling the strings.
Yeah.
Which was the higher ups in the military. Like, this is what the military wanted. This is what they had to do. They couldn't say no, or it's basically a death sentence.
And that's why a lot of soldiers, we hear that a lot, why they go along with things, even though they are atrocious. It's that fear of retribution from the group, the military group that they're a part of, because if they don't follow orders, what happens? They can go to jail. They can be
killed.
And it's ridiculous because if I know you signed up for military service, but if you feel like an action is morally wrong, I feel like you should have a say in that.
I feel like that's one of those things when a lot of people think they're signing up for military service and stuff like that. Obviously, there's going to be the chance of going to war and everything else. But even looking at it through their aspect, these people signed up because they thought they were helping people. They thought they were going to be, they're not only the military, but they also act like police force. They police the streets. They help take bad people off the streets, everything else. So when you sign up, you think, well, I'm going to do good. This is what I'm going to do with my life. It's going to be awesome. I'm going to help people. This is what I want to do. And then the military, goes to war and you're ordered to, in their case, wipe out an entire nation of people or an entire, genocide, basically.
And, I never really thought about it up until now, but it's a very interesting parallel to Nazi Germany.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know we've made comparisons to Germany already because of Fuhrer, Bradley, and all that stuff. But this, I mean, when you really put that in perspective, that's kind of the same thing in a way.
Exactly. And they only left a handful alive, which is what Hitler did to the Jewish people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those things that they're just, even in today's world, we're going to take the whole, it's still on the topic of war and everything. We're going to take the Ukraine and the Russian war.
Mm-hmm.
You have Russian soldiers who are being drafted and made to fight the Ukrainian people. You have soldiers who are putting down their guns and defecting, which could literally get them killed if they're ever caught by their own country.
Mm-hmm.
But these Russian people aren't wanting to fight, but they're being made to fight because of the government who is tyrannical and who is evil. Putin's evil.
Yeah, he's a dictator.
But you also have some that do follow suit, which we have seen. The Iron Blood Alchemist was one of those military dogs who followed suit. He supported the military. He didn't care that innocent people died, and he was going to continue doing it. Mustang and his friends see the horrible things that the military has done, and their goal is to get as high up as possible, or get Mustang as high up as possible so he can change it, so he can make it better. And it's one of those struggles that I feel like people in the real world, and obviously countries in the real world, continue to face today, because you're always going to have those two sides. You're always going to have those people who think things can be done better, and people who just don't care and are going to just wipe people off the face of the earth because they think it's going to solve their problems.
Mm-hmm. And it's very interesting to see this type of parallel, and I won't say that a lot of shows wouldn't do that, but I mean, I applaud them for laying it out there without it being too obvious. But I feel like that if you look hard enough, it is very obvious, and it's a great idea, not killing people, but just I feel like good narratives do that. They shine a light on society, and I know that this is a little far removed, but, or at least at the time that this came out, but I feel like there's still a lot of, what's the word I'm looking for here? Relevance in it to really look at it, and even using, like you said, the Ukraine and Russia conflict right now. That's a great example.
Yeah. And I mean, this stuff is still happening today. We've heard Philip DeFranco talk about, I don't remember what they're called, but there is a group of people in China who are still being like hunted down and killed.
The Uyghurs.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And are still being persecuted and still being killed by their own government. And it's no different than literally what they're talking about in Fullmetal Alchemist. You have these people who you're just wanting to kill because they don't view the same things as you do, or they don't want to adapt to what you're doing.
Hmm.
I mean, if you really think about it, like the military definitely has in Fullmetal Alchemist, it definitely has that Nazi vibe, but I also feel like it kind of has an American vibe. We push Christianity and our beliefs on every other country. We have always shoved it down their throats, whether they wanted it or not.
I mean, there's numerous instances of that where you see these American soldiers invade a country and then suddenly it was like, well, you have to be like us now. So you have to be this kind of country and we're going to do everything we can to change the way you used to be. Not saying that the way they used to be was good, but why does it have to be our way? Maybe they could find a way that works best for them and benefits everybody.
Exactly.
You know, it doesn't have to be this way. It can be whatever way works best for them, because what is right for me, what's right for you, and everybody else differs.
Yes, having different cultures, and even when it comes to different religions, there's so many different religions, and there's a lot of them that are really beautiful in their own way. I love how, I'm trying to think of how, I guess the best way to say it, but like the Spanish people, like the Day of the Dead. I absolutely love the way that they not only celebrate not so much the death of the loved ones, but the fact that, you know, they're going to the afterlife, they're going to be with their family and everything else. But they also feel as long as you keep that person in their memory and your memory, they're going to live on forever. So they instill that in each generation, and each generation carries on loving these people that they have never even met, but they know their faces, they know they're their family, and they love them and they celebrate them. And just to think of that being an afterlife fills me with so much joy. And I'm not a religious person anymore.
But it's a beautiful sentiment.
Yes. Like,
to know that you will never be forgotten.
Exactly. And I showed you that it was a video from TikTok, everybody. I don't remember the name of the person who did it, but they were talking about, you know, with that whole idea, when you pass over with that religion, there's the land of the dogs, and that if you had a dog that you loved in your lifetime, then they would be there to lead you through the different trials so you could find peace and everything in the land of the dead. That is absolutely fucking beautiful. No other religion that I know of has something like that. So many people in this world, including you and me, have loved dogs. They have been a huge part of our lives, and we still love them to this day, and their memory still lives on. And to think that we could die and end up somewhere where they're going to be, and they're going to lead us to peace and be with us for the rest of our lives, that is like the best thing ever. And no offense to Christianity, but it doesn't have that.
But no, I mean, I feel like there's a reason to criticize Christianity more than anything nowadays, because there used to be a time when I used to think that there was a beautiful sentiment about it, because we even watched, as we've mentioned before, we watched an episode of MASH here recently, and Father Mulcahy, in a sermon reflecting on himself and what it means to be a good Christian for him, I can't remember the words specifically, but he laid something out in his sermon that was just so pure and so right about what it should be. And I was like, that is beautiful, because it was not about what God is, but what he should be within all of us. Yes. And how that is what makes God. You know, that is like the personification of him, is this goodness, this selflessness in all of us, and how we treat others. And I don't know, just the way he said it, I was just like, that is beautiful. And if Christians today would have that mentality, I wouldn't have a problem with it at all. Because
and there are still Christians today that are like that.
I know, but there are just so many. When you hear, it's the group, it's the loud group that says, well, I'm a Christian and I hate you. And it's like, but that right there is a contradiction to your religion.
Yes.
Turn the other cheek. And yet you hate so much when you hear about all these people who just have so much hate in their hearts and yet say, I'm a Christian. It's like, but are you?
Mm-hmm.
I can't. And that's why I had to turn myself away from it, because that's all I heard associated with Christianity, hatred. And I know that's not the same for everybody, but the loudest majority makes you believe that. And I've seen good people. Yes. And I know that they still exist out there. Some great people who can say, I'm a Christian and I love and believe in God, but it's just, it seems so toxic now.
Yes.
And like you said, there are so many other beautiful religions out there that do not seek this hatred for other people. It's all about acceptance and love. And that's the kind of stuff that fascinates me the most. Is when you hear about that, that's what it needs to be.
Yes.
Not
100%.
This exclusion.
100%. And I feel like that's something that, even though I feel like they definitely touch on in Fullmetal Alchemist, kind of, obviously a religious aspect, because the Ishbalian Ishbalian people are religious. They have their own god. They worship their god. They, believe that Alchemist, or the magic behind Alchemists and everything like that, or alchemy, is a godlike power, which is what divided them to begin with. And what did the military do? They kept pushing it down their throat and pushing it down their throat. And then a child died, and then you have your war, and they wiped out all of these people. And if they would have just listened and been like, you know what? We respect that you have a god. We respect that you don't like our things. So you do you, we'll do us. Peaceful.
Yeah.
But they didn't. They had to keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And of course, you'll find out why. But that same truth goes today. Like, I don't think I've ever heard anything bad ever said about a Buddhist person. I don't think I've ever heard anything bad said about, the people who worship like the Day of the Dead or anything like that. But any type of Christianity, any type, like freaking Catholics, all of that, you hear horrible things, whether they have said or they have done. There are still wars fought over religion. And if everybody, like Ed and Al, want to push, just accept everybody for who they are. Be thankful you are here. Be thankful you're breathing. Be thankful you have the people that you have around you, and love them for however long you have them. But don't fight over useless things. And I feel like that's all any war has been fought over, is just useless things, because what have you gotten over it or out of it? And you could say, well, Revolutionary War, we got our freedom and everything else. Okay. But we are now doing the exact same thing that the British people did to our ancestors, forcing religion, forcing you to adapt and become like them so that you could just be another cog in their machine. And we broke away from it to do our own thing, and now we're doing it to our own citizens. Yep.
And we got way off topic, by the way.
We did, but I feel like it's still relevant.
No, it's very
relevant. That's how hard Fullmetal Alchemist hits. And I mean, we're just going to keep going, and people could say, maybe we're reaching or whatever else. But I feel like if you've watched it and you are a lover of this show, and even you being the first time you've watched it, you're picking up on these things, and it makes me very happy.
No, I mean, it's not one of these that tries to use glorified metaphors.
Oh, no. And I feel like it lays it out.
No, but it does it in such a subtle way that you can see the reflections, and they don't bury it so deep that you have to think on it and be like, I don't understand it. Like, one of my all-time favorite movies that does metaphors wonderfully and still feel like is relevant today is Planet of the Apes. Now, granted, the book does not reflect the movie in the same way, but the way the movie approached it, they were like, well, what is going on today in society? And then flip it and then show the mirror. So now we see everything from the opposite viewpoint, and who some would say are the bad guys are now the good guys, and vice versa. And then when you see it through a different lens, you're pretty much having the mirror shown back at you. And now that may have been a reflection of the times in the 1960s, because that was during Vietnam, and that's a lot of what they were trying to relate to. But I mean, I still feel like it's relevant today, about a lot of stuff like racism and the government and all that stuff. So yeah, I love stories that can do that. They can shine a light while still entertaining you.
Yes.
And do everything. It makes you think, but you're entertained at the same time.
100%.
So yeah, with this, I mean, we got, we kind of, I'll just breeze through everything real quick, because there was, after where I was kind of left off with the boy who found Al's suit, he was wanting to go beat up some local group or trying to prove himself. And he's like, I'll be invincible in this. And of course that didn't really pan out, because Al got into his head and kind of talked him out of it, or tried to anyway. I would assume he did.
Scared him out of it.
I guess. And then a little girl who, like after you said with Ed and Armstrong, they had their little falling out. He found a girl and she panicked, or at least that's the way it seemed. But then she knocked him out, stole his leg. And then that's where she went to the grandfather that we had mentioned. And her whole goal was to give him that. And then that's where they had that wonderful conversation where he was pretty much getting him to reconsider or think about, he made Ed, much like what we were talking about, made Ed rethink what his goal was.
Yes.
Because he was like, well, I can hook you up with somebody who can make you legs. I don't want it. And he's like, why wouldn't you want it? And he told him, he's like, I've already lost it. What does it matter? And he kind of took the idea of equivalent exchange and just twisted it for Ed. And he was like, I'd never thought of it that way. So it made him kind of question his motives going forward. And I thought that was kind of an interesting take on it. So he's now I wouldn't say rethinking everything, but he's looking at it through different eyes, which we all should do.
Yeah. And I mean, that's one of the things that the man points out. He says, if you have a dream and you accomplish it, then it never was a dream.
Yeah.
Like a dream is something that's supposed to be unobtainable. So he's telling Ed, well, this is your dream to get your leg and your body back, or your leg and arm and your brother's body back. But if you accomplish it, then it's not really a dream. It's just something basically you've set out to do. You've done it. So now what?
Yeah.
Now you have just nothing to live for. Like, what do you do after you get these back? Where is, the world going to be? What's it going to cost you to get these things back? Right. Instead of just living with the decision that you made and the consequences thereof, which is what this man has done. And
that also goes back to his participation in the Ishbal War, where that's what he's doing. It's not wallowing in self-pity. It's just like, this is my equivalent exchange. This is what I had to do. And now I got to live with it. So,
but now he gets to live peacefully with his grandchildren.
And one of the grandchildren happened to be the boy. Yes. A big surprise. Which, when he comes running back, Ed's leaving, contemplating those words, and then he finds Al, and they kind of have a little talk, and then Armstrong finds him, picks him up, takes him back to the train station, and they're back on their adventure.
Yes.
So, yeah, it was a wonderful episode that does kind of feel fillerish, but I felt like there was character growth. So I wouldn't consider it filler in the sense that nothing happened, because I felt like what happened with Al or with Ed was very important to him and his character. So I wouldn't call it filler per se. Just it like you said, kind of felt like filler because of the way everything was kind of laid out, but it was important.
Yeah.
It was important for Al or Ed. God damn it. Why can't I ever...
It was important for Ed.
Yeah. So, yeah, that was the episode.
Yes. Well, I am so glad that you are enjoying it as much as I am, because you have, and you keep saying that, you are ready to watch another episode and everything else. It makes me so happy.
Oh,
And I feel like we're burning through it so fast, but then again, we're not, because we still have 53 episodes. Well, there are a total of 53 episodes, and we're only at 16. So we still have a ways to go.
I feel like if we weren't doing a podcast, we would have burned through it already.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. We would have binged watched that shit. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, since that is all we have to say about the episode, Steven, do you want to lead us out?
Guys, tell all your Weeaboo friends to find us on their favorite podcasting platform. We're on all the big ones now. I apparently even got us on to iHeartRadio and Pandora and Radio Public and whatever all these other things are. Didn't realize that we weren't there, but I took care of it. So we're even more places than we were the last time I said. And if you want to listen to episodes a week early, patreon.com/pencilpaperproductions. That's what I'm trying to do. And if I see people are doing it, then, I'll keep doing it. And maybe I'll just drop them all, whatever's done at the time. And you won't have to wait a week. You can just binge them all right then and there. You can also go to pencilpaperproductions.com/inspired weeaboo to keep up with any and all things that we are doing.
All right, my little weebs. We'll see you next time.
This has been a Pencil and Paper Podcast Network production.